This is what it's all about. Right up in here is a good one. Let's see if we can get that down. There it goes. The tallest Douglas fir that was ever recorded in the United States, I think was in Oregon, and it was over 300 feet tall. That's gnarly. That is an awesome color. All right, my friend, today you and me are gonna have a very fun day ahead of us. We're gonna go outside into the woods, something I've been wanting to do all winter long, and get conifer needles. Predominantly, I'm gonna try to get needles from spruce trees and Douglas fir, and then we're gonna harvest a bunch, bring them home, and dehydrate them and turn them into a powder that you can use as seasoning for either your savory dishes or even desserts. Yeah, that's what we're gonna do. It's been a really, really fun winter weekend so far. And yesterday we were fishing and we absolutely crushed the perch. It was incredible. Like, I haven't had an ice fishing day like that in a long time. And it's very satisfying because we really wanted to figure out the perch here in Montana this year. Let me just show you real quick and then we'll keep moving and get into the woods. Here's Lindy. How's your coffee?
Awesome.
Check this out. Crazy. We caught all these yesterday, mostly Lindy and my brother.
Yeah.
I caught like 5 of these. Yeah, so lots of good fish for the next few days. We're gonna have a big fish fry, and this video is also going to be on the YouTube channel probably by the time you watch this video. So that's why I just wanted to show you guys that. So if you're interested in that, definitely check it out. It was a super good day, super fun day. All right, we're going to get going now into the woods. And I'm going to talk a little bit about, Douglas fir and spruce ID and just kind of show you the differences. And then, like I said, we're going to harvest all that. And we'll see. Maybe we'll get needles from some other conifers too. I hope I can even find a Douglas fir. We usually have a lot, but like I said, I don't know if I can get to the spots I'm trying to get to today with all this snow because it's coming down right now. But we'll see. You can really use any conifer needle for this powder. So spruce and Douglas fir are just the two I prefer. I like the flavor a lot. All right, enough talk. Let's get to it. Almost forgot. Guys, we are gifting this book on the channel right now. So this is Sam Thayer's Field Guide to Wild Edible Plants, a must-have for any forager out there. This is the book I probably get the most value from, and we want to pass the love along to you. So all you have to do is leave a comment on this video right now, and if I reply to your comment with the mushroom emoji, then congratulations. That means you won this gift. All right, let's go on an adventure. All right, we are in the woods now. Had to go to a totally new spot that I've never been to because I couldn't go to my spot I had planned on just because it's snowing so crazy and the roads are pretty bad. But we made it up this big hill, still kind of working my way up here. It's super slippery. I'm just like slipping the entire time. I should have worn some ice cleats or something. But anyway, we're definitely in a conifer forest all around us here. And so far I've seen a lot of Douglas fir, so we'll definitely be able to harvest some of that. Haven't seen too many spruce, but hopefully I can find a few in here. There's got to be some somewhere. But if not, we'll just get a bunch of Douglas fir for our thing that we're going to make for our conifer needle powder. Let's poke around and see if we can find a good Douglas fir so I can show you some idea and what to look for if you're looking for that particular species of conifer. Okay, we have a Douglas fir right here where Waffles is taking a pee. So, this is a mature Douglas fir. You can basically see this bark in the mature tree. It's very distinct. It's kind of rough, scaly, a little bit gray. And it's got these fissures. Usually they can get pretty darn deep. And the fissures are like yellow to orange to slightly tan, I would say. And they almost look like cork on the inside here. So that's something you want to look for if you're looking for Douglas fir. The smaller Douglas fir trees, when they're young, they won't have this kind of bark. They'll have smooth gray bark. And honestly, for me, it's still sometimes hard to tell young conifers apart just by their bark. So you also want to pair your ID with other things like the needles. So if we take a look at Douglas fir needles here, you can see they are really fluffy. First of all, they're not very rigid and hard. They have a tip, a pointed tip, but the pointed tips like aren't really spiky or pokey. They don't hurt you. And then the needles in the bottom, let's see if you can see that. They have white lines. Let's maybe go over here into the light some more. Let's try here. This might be showing up a bit better in the camera, but you have white lines in the bottom of the leaves. And yes, the needles are the leaves in conifers. And a really good way to distinguish these from firs and spruce is to look at the connection points of the needles, right where they connect to the little twig or branch, whatever you want to call it. So for the Douglas fir, they are connected with a very thin petiole, a little, like the little stem you would see on a leaf basically, but just a very tiny one. And it's kind of kinked, whereas the spruce sits on actual little wooden pegs almost, like little brown pegs. And the fir kind of just abruptly attaches to the twig, almost with like suction cups. So those are all things you want to look for in the Douglas fir. And then the other thing that is kind of a telltale sign is the cone. Now, I was looking for cones here below this tree, but with all the snow, I can't really seem to find any, but I saw some hanging on the tree. So let me try to get one down. There's a stick over here. Maybe I can snag one. Right up in here is a good one. Let's see if we can get that down. There it goes. All right. This is a pretty good example, I would say. So looking at this cone here, it is pretty light brown. If you find them on the ground, you might find some more gray or dull looking ones. This one came off the tree, so it's still got some color. And it hangs downwards for these, which is good to know if you're seeing them on the tree and you're trying to identify the tree. But then you can also see these like three-pronged bracts kind of coming out of the cone here. Let's put it in front of some snow. So I know it's kind of dark out here right now and you might not be seeing it too well. But if you look closely, I guess this is a pretty good example. This little bract here, it kind of looks like the butt of a mouse, you know, with the two legs and the tails hanging off. And there's actually a legend around these. So the legend has it that there once was a really, really bad forest fire, and all the animals tried to escape the forest. You know, the elk and the bears, the big animals with long legs that could run, they ran away. But the smaller animals, specifically the mice, sought shelter by the Douglas fir trees. And legend has it that the mice crawled into the cones of the Douglas fir, up in the branches. And this is why you still have the little mice hanging out of here with their butts. So just a kind of a fun little legend. I thought it was cool, kind of cute. And the Douglas fir tree, I'm pretty sure I remember reading that it is like a super fire resistant tree, which is pretty cool. So, you know, once the fires come through, they have a really thick bark and they tend to survive a lot of fires. And actually, I think a lot of conifers need a fire to really get going, like to grow, for the seeds to germinate and all that. But I do need to look into that a bit more still. So if you know know more about that, definitely let me know in the comments below. So I'd love to learn from you in that regard. All right, so what we're gonna do next is harvest some of these twigs from this Douglas fir here, and we'll just take a few from each, you know, as I kind of meander up this trail and try to fill our foraging bag here. All right, so I'm just gonna take some of these twigs. They snap off really easily. I brought a knife, but I don't think we're gonna need that. Just gonna take a few of these. You know what, while we're at it, let's sample one of these Douglas fir needles. Or a few. Oh yeah. Such a good citrusy flavor. They do have some bitterness, but what I found with a lot of these conifers is that every tree can be a little bit different when it comes to bitterness. This one isn't all that bitter. I like it. We're gonna take him. All right, let's keep on moving up this trail. Real quick, another thing I forgot to mention about the Douglas fir needles. So if you look at them straight on like this, they actually kind of whirl around the little twig here, whereas a fir usually sits more flat on the left and the right and kind of curl upwards. Whereas these have a little bit of a curl, but they're kind of still pointing all around the twig here. And that's similar to a spruce. A spruce will do that too, kind of whirl around it. Another good thing to know about the Douglas fir is that it's actually not a true fir, even though it has fir in the name. So Douglas fir is it's a false hemlock is basically what it's called. I think it's like Pseudosoga monensiae or something like that. I might have butchered that name. I'll try to blend it in here, the scientific name for it. Waffles is having a lot of fun. He's got the zoomies right now. But yeah, so just know that it's not a true fir. The fir are in the genus Abies. And yeah, that's just something to know. The Douglas fir are kind of a species of their own. They're also, even though they're called false hemlock, they're not the poisonous hemlock, you know, the plants in the same family that the carrots are in and all that. The parsley, those you definitely want to avoid. They're very poisonous, deadly. So definitely learn about water hemlock and poison hemlock if you haven't yet as a forager. And you know, as always with any foraging, you need to be 100% sure of your identification before you eat anything. So I just wanted to throw that out there. One more thing about the Douglas fir, you can kind of see behind me here. They are super, super tall. Like these are all, pretty sure I can see the orange bark from here. These are all Douglas fir. And they can usually get up to like 100 feet. But from what I was reading, the tallest Douglas fir that was ever recorded in the United States, I think was in Oregon, and it was over 300 feet tall. That's gnarly. So I'm pretty sure that makes the Douglas fir like the second largest conifer species that we have here, which is pretty awesome. I mean, a 300-foot tall tree, that would be a sight to see. I'm pretty sure only the redwoods are the ones that are even taller than the Douglas fir. It's a pretty sweet tree if you ask me. All right, this is kind of fun. Let's see if I can get over there with all this snow. This is a small little Douglas fir. You can see it's already getting its rougher bark with the orange fissures. I see a cone up in there and the needles, all signs of Douglas fir. So this tree is probably like maybe 15 feet tall, 12, 15 feet, and already showing like a rougher bark, you know, so that makes it kind of easy to ID, or easier I should say. Oh, look what I just found. Another Douglas fir cone. Again, here are the little bracts, the little mice coming out of the scales. Very distinct cone. You can't like mess this up with anything really. Okay, we got more Douglas fir to harvest here. I wonder if there's a difference in flavor in the winter and the summer. I've never really experimented like with that, but that might be a good future video to test out. This one tastes pretty good. I just sampled some of it. Yeah. Kind of tastes like, you know, the outside of an orange. And that's actually due to terpenes that are in the conifer trees. I forget the name, but I think it's limon. Limon is the terpene, something like that. That's one of the big ones in there. I think I took a note. Let me look on my phone quick. So I wanted to share that with you in case you were interested. Alright, yeah, so the compounds that give it that citrusy flavor are the same ones that are in citrus fruits, and they're terpenes, and in particular there's limonene and pinene. And those, they give it that kind of tangy, zingy, that zingy flavor, that citrusy zingy flavor. Really good. Check this out. There's all this sap coming off this tree. That's pretty cool. So if you're interested, we actually have a video where we take the sap from spruce and we make spruce gum, traditional spruce gum with the sap. So I'll try to link that above so you can check that out if you're interested. That was a super fun project and, you know, a great thing to do with kids in the winter. Here we have a Douglas fir, a dead one, that looks like it's been inhabited by a bunch of ground dwellers, or maybe squirrels, I don't know. Something has made its home in here. I almost don't want to put my hand in there too far. Might be that something comes out and gets me. Let's keep on moving. Still haven't found a spruce, but hopefully soon. So one thing that's pretty cool is that way down by the trail, I actually found a ton of rose hips. And rose hips are one of those wild fruits you can harvest way into the winter. We also did a video on those. That's on the channel if you want to learn how to forage for rose hips. Definitely worth checking out because they can be a really fun food source from the wild. Man, it is so nice out here. Just got to this really nice lookout. Got a beautiful valley below us. This is what it's all about. Getting out in nature. One of the big reasons I love foraging so much. It's because I get to experience stuff like this and bring home delicious food. But anyway, my sack is really full. All good Douglas fir needles in here. And we're gonna go now, go back home and get to processing some needles. All right, buddy, let's go home. Come. All right, guys, really good news. I'm almost all the way down the trail and we ran into a spruce. I had to really go digging in the snow though. Look how deep it is. It's crazy. This is like knee deep. I'm 6 foot tall. My boots are absolutely soaked. But here we have a spruce. If you look up it, it's got like, they usually have this like perfect conical Christmas tree shape. And if you look right here on the tip where the needles are off, you can kind of see those little wooden pegs along there. That's where the spruce needles attach. And they also, like I mentioned, they whirl around the branch. But another thing to point out with spruce is that they roll really easily between your fingers. because they're much more like square, whereas the Douglas fir and the true fir are flat needles. And yeah, so I'm definitely gonna grab some of these. Let's give it a taste. That one's pretty good. So I'm gonna take some of those home. And then we should have a pretty nice mix of mostly Douglas fir and some spruce to throw in there. Awesome. All right, see you back home. Okay, we're back at home with our loot bag, our foraging loot. Let's go. Let's get our needles out, our twigs. Got some spruce here. All that Douglas fir. Got more than I thought I did. These bags are really handy, by the way. I have a foraging gear blog on the website with links to these if you want to check that out. Okay, so from here, it's really pretty simple. All we have to do now is kind of like strip the needles from the twigs and put them in a bowl, and then we'll go on to the next step. Sometimes they're a bit stubborn. I feel like there's got to be an even more efficient way to do this, but maybe not. As always, if you know, let us know in the comments below, because we love learning from your tips. We also have a whole live podcast that Lindy and I did on the YouTube channel, where we go into like spruce and pine and fir and talk about the idea of them, like of them all, and have some better pictures and close-ups of, you know, what the needles look like and all that. So I highly encourage you to check that out if you just want to get better with conifer trees. It's one of our early videos, so you might have to scroll back a bit, or you know what, I'll try to blend it in if I can here. Still trying to figure out all those YouTube features. So this is going to take me a while, and I'm not going to make you watch it all. We'll just cut to when we're ready with the next step. All right, so we got our needles here. This is only like a quarter of them, I would say. In the interest of time, because we still got stuff to do later, and it actually takes kind of a while to get these needles off, I decided that we're just going to do a small batch now to show you how to do it. And then, you know, the needles are just going to sit in the bag over there, continue to air dry, and I'll just get to them later this week. That's not a problem at all. I did want to mention too quick that you could just literally use these twigs for like flavoring roasts, or when you're like frying up a fish in some butter, you know, just toss some of these in here. Again, you want to taste them. I feel like these winter twigs here now, and I brought this up earlier, but they just a lot more bitter than I expected. So, you know, my favorite time to really get needles and all that is in the spring and summer when you got that new growth. That tends to also be a bit mellower on the bitter side. But it all, like I said, kind of depends on the tree too, the like individual tree. So all I'm going to do now is spread my needles out as best I can on these sheets here. So what we got is we have these dehydrator trays, but you know, the needles would fall through. So I have these dehydrator safe, what do you call them? Like pads, I guess, or just like little sheets to put on top of the dehydrator sheets. And yeah, that'll keep the needles from falling through. So I'm just going to spread these out semi-loose. You know, we don't want them to be too tightly packed. All right, putting in our last sheet here without making a giant mess. Then we're going to put it at like, let's see, temperature wise, I'm going to set it at like 122 for about 10 hours. And then in the morning, when I wake up, I'll bring the camera, and we can see what this looks like. You know, it might take a little longer, or it might be perfect. What we want is really crunchy needles so that we can easily blend them up and turn them into a powder. All right, that's really it. Super easy on the processing front. See you in the morning. Guys, we ran into a problem, and it's actually a pretty big problem for me, but you know, we were able to work around it. So what happened is that we were dehydrating with our dehydrator here, and you know, things just weren't getting dry until we realized that this thing is just blowing cold air. So something with the dehydrator is unfortunately broken. It happens. Upset that it's happening with this device already because it's only like 3 years old, and I'm gonna have to look into how to fix it because this is a staple in a forager's household. Like, you know, dehydrator, you can do so much with it. So what I did in the meantime, I went to the good old oven here and went the oven dehydrator method, I'm gonna call it, which is basically just turning your oven to the lowest temperature setting and then using like a wooden spoon here to put in there and just leaving a little space so that some air can come out, and yeah, just basically dehydrating in the oven. And this was at 170 degrees now for a while. And let's turn it off and get these out. The house smells amazing, by the way. So I think I probably had the needles in there for a good, at least 12 hours now in the oven. Because like I said, the rest just wasn't cutting it. So if you don't have a dehydrator, you can use your oven, I guess is the moral of the story here. And they're looking good. They're smelling really nice. Okay, let me get the camera over here. So here you go. Nicely dehydrated needles. You can tell they're not as green anymore, and you want them to snap easily and have that crunchy noise. Like that. And now I recommend you get one of these electric spice grinders. You can also use a coffee grinder or like a blender. That's going to make this a lot faster and easier. I guess if you really, really want to go traditional, you can get one of those mocajentes, you know, one of those spice grinders, and just go to town that way. That's actually kind of fun. If you have enough time, you're watching a movie or something, why not? But we're going to go the easier route today. So I'm just going to pack this full with some of the needles and start grinding. And I want to get a really fine powder ideally. That's just how I do it. But you know, it's up to you. Maybe you like it a bit more coarser. I like it pretty fine. All right, that should be good. Okay, so here we are. You can see nice green, spring green color. I'm just going to put it in a jar that we have here. And then I'm going to repeat that with my entire batch. But here is how much we have so far. So I'm going to cut to when I'm done with all this, and then we'll talk a bit more about this powder and how you can use it in the kitchen. All right, here we go. This is the loot. This is how much we got from all those pine needles. The small batch we made, we still have some left, but look at that. That is an awesome color. I think this turned out pretty good. And I'm telling you, the smell here right now while I'm grinding all of this, our whole house seems to be smelling like conifer needles. Let's give it a taste and see how it turned out. Very good. You definitely have that conifer needle taste, you know, the citrus taste. It does have some bitterness to it. And again, like we talked about earlier, I have this theory that if you get the conifer needles more in winter, they're going to be more bitter in general than, you know, in the spring when you get the new growth, or more into the summer. And I talked to some fellow foragers now, and they have confirmed that theory. They have also noticed the same. So if you don't want it as bitter, you know, maybe get it at a different time of the year. But let's talk about how you can actually use this. So personally, Our favorite way to use this would be as a seasoning, you know, maybe in a stew or on some fish. It's really nice. I really like to combine like trout with the conifer flavor. If your batch turns out a bit more bitter, you could use it as a bitter in cocktail making, which is pretty cool. And actually, Lindy and I just made some fresh fermented soda, and we have some of the Douglas fir twigs that I picked on our trip here earlier in the video. We used in the soda, and I bet you could also just use the powder in the soda making process. And we're gonna have a video of this in the future, you know, how we make the soda. So definitely keep an eye out for that on the channel. So that's one way to use it. You could use it in desserts, you know, anything that requires maybe a powder in a dessert as like a garnish, or, you know, like for the visual appeal, like tiramisu, for example. I've seen people use this on tiramisu to give it like a bit of a, you know, make like a Christmas tiramisu, give it a bit of a Christmas touch. So those are just some ways you can use it. You can use it for medicine. I bet you can make nice extracts once it's a powder, you know, maybe even better than if you're using the whole needles. And the conifers have been used for food and medicine for thousands of years by people, by humans. So this is a great way to kind of, you know, continue that tradition on, especially in the winter while you can't forage a bunch of other things. So yeah, if you guys have any other uses for this in the kitchen, you know, maybe some creative uses, make sure you drop it in the comments below so we can all learn from you. And, you know, the best ones I'll pin on the top. But that's it. Now, all we got to do is put on a lid and put it in our storage shelf. Check out this killer shelf that Lindy built for all of our jars and honey and all of our goodies. Super excited about that. And right here we already have some conifer alcohol extracts. And right next to it, we'll keep our powder. I could probably put this in a smaller jar if I wanted to. If you're worried, you know, if you dehydrate it and for some reason this still feels wet to you, you can now take this powder and put it in the dehydrator for a little longer if you really feel like you need to. And in here, just to keep it for a longer time, I recommend putting a oxygen absorber. We're out of them right now, so I got to order some. So we're probably gonna just keep an eye on it, but I dehydrated it long enough to where I think it is gonna stay fresh for a really long time. And, you know, it's fully dry, so I don't expect any mold or anything. That's it, guys. Thanks for watching.